Right, we're on to section 15.2 where we're going to learn about line integrals. But before we get to the definition of a line integral, we're going to talk about some parametric curves again for a bit. So we call a curve r of t, which let's say that this is a plane curve, so it would have like an x component, comma y of t, a y component. We call this smooth on some interval. So let's say that interval is a to b. If the derivative of the x component, so if the x dt and the derivative of the y component, dy dt, are continuous, on that interval a to b. The other thing that we need for it to be smooth is that we need them to be not both 0 on a to b. And so what we would mean by that is we would mean not both 0 simultaneously. So they could individually be 0 at various points, but we don't want them to be simultaneously, those derivatives to be simultaneously 0 at any point. And then the same idea, similar for a three-dimensional curve, so that would be like an f of t is an x component, like x of t, y of t, and z of t. So we've already looked at these parametric curves in the past, but just this idea of this smooth definition. And then to extend that a little bit, we're then going to define that a curve is piecewise smooth. You can kind of think about what that's going to look like. It's piecewise smooth on a to b if we can partition let's spell right. Partition a to b into a finite number of subintervals where on each of those subintervals the curve is smooth. So essentially what that would look like then is we're writing our parametric curve function as a piecewise function where the domain of those piecewise functions together form the full domain of a to b. So we're going to look at a couple examples of that in a minute here, of trying to figure out, okay, if I have a graph of a curve, how can I create a piecewise smooth parameterization of it? So if you do want to review things a little bit, going back to chapter 12, which was when we talked about parametric curves the first time, could be helpful just to look at how do you do parameterizations at all, and then that will help you jump into doing these piecewise smooth parameterizations.